Hi, I'm Prashant. I've been here in Himachal in the small village Bir since last 15 years. I moved up here in 2004, 2005 to set up Deer Park Institute for Zongsa Khense Rinpoche, who's a Buddhist teacher from the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. This institute was set up in 2005 with the aim to sort of revive, make accessible the ancient Nalanda tradition of study and practice of Buddhism. As you all know, Nalanda was a historical civilizational university which flourished between 4th, 5th century AD till the 11th, 12th century AD. Probably the first so called university, or probably one of the biggest centers of learning in the world. Uh, I'm not from this area. I was born in Punjab. I grew up in Bombay to a very normal middle class Hindu Sikh family. Father was in the Air Force, mother is an artist, only child. Growing up in Bombay and sort of growing up in a sort of broad Hindu cultural experience, I think by the time I was 14, 15, I had started experiencing certain questions about myself which I could not find answers to. Who am I? Who's inside? The ghost in the machine? What's the purpose of my life? Sort of. These are not like career or whether I should join science or arts, or not that kind of level. Just some unease within sort of this who's inside me that probed me to explore reading some philosophy. My father had books of people like Camus, Sartre, Nietzsche, naturally very European post sort of industrial revolution sort of thinkers, and that kind of context. So I mean I think for some level attracted by Nietzsche, Zarathustra, and that whole Superman, and a little bit started reading more German thought, going to Max Muller, Bhavan, and that sort of exposure. Alongside, I think by when I was 16, 17, started feeling some concern for social issues. My father had a bit of that background. He was also in, when he was flying civil, he became a trade union leader for the pilots union, and so I had that sort of sense of, I don't know, fighting for injustice, and uh, some adolescent idealism. uh, Coming to university, I mean, by the time I was in 11th, 12th, I had to sort of make choices whether to take which stream. And in Bombay, we enter something called junior college after 10th grade, and I was sort of confused what to do. So I jumped in for science at Xavier's, because the idea was that from science, you can shift to commerce or arts, science being higher and others are all lower. But if you go lower, you can't climb higher, which is kind of ridiculous anyway. So I did that, and after 12th, I said, okay, now what do I do? I was still not sure what to do. Fortunately, my parents never gave me any form of pressure. So, uh, no, there was these standard choices, because your father's a pilot, you could become a pilot. Many of my friends became pilots, and pilot was a good, attractive, lucrative career. 20, 25 years ago, civil aviation was just opening up in India, and so, but I thought, okay, maybe I thought, let me try law. So I got into government law college. 2 months later, I bunked it. I said, I need to do something, so I said, let me explore philosophy. So there was only one college offering a bachelor's degree in philosophy in entire Bombay, which tells you the priorities of a city, which was Mithibai. And there were 55 people who joined philosophy. And I was told, no, in the class of 55, there were 48 girls. And I was told that was like the option for those who want to do arranged marriage. So luckily, I had this professor, Prabodh Parekh, who told me in the first 1 month that I will get more out of a 10-day Vipassana than 3 years of philosophy. And he offered me a deal, actually, that he'll exempt me from attendance, whole 3 years. So I jumped for the bait. Went to Igatpuri, put into a hall full of 600 men, And in the evening, people doing their bhajan, aarti, completely cheating the silence, all that kind of. It is a very intense experience for me because that was the first exposure I had to a sense of self at the level of emotions and sensations. Otherwise, it was very conceptual, the sense of self. Suddenly, here, after third day of silence, you are experiencing a sense of self which you never previously, for 18 or never fathomed. I think silence itself does that. So that was very intense. Not the most comfortable experience, painful. 12 hours a day sitting for a 18-year-old who's never done. Anyway, I'm sort of fast tracking, came back from that, continued with my philosophy, never went to class, had my classes with Prabodh over beer and classical music at his house. We started a film society in 97, Mithibai Film Society in Bhaidas Auditorium. Prabodh, Kinri, another professor of politics. Probably you know her husband, Ramu Ramanathan, playwright. So we started this film club together, three of us, and we ran it for 3 years. Showed great cinema. And film was a powerful media for me to get into social issues and start relating with world views and diverse realities of the world. Through Iranian and Czechoslovakian and Middle Eastern. And that was also the period in the late 90s, Narmada movement was. So that was an issue which was sort of coming up in a lot of our young student, little bit of the alternate groups in colleges. I remember even going for some dharna at one of the big grounds, now I even forget, in South Bombay. Not Azad, the other one. Anyway, so I think by middle of college I started, also because my home is near the mountains, Chandigarh. I used to trek a lot, visit grandparents and go. So there was something in the Himalayas which drew me. And in my bachelor's in philosophy, I was far more attracted to Advait of Shankara and Ramanuja and Vallabha than Buddhism. And I think the exposure in academia to Buddhism is far less than even Advait. Again, due to historical reasons. And the Igatpuri experience didn't give you any much of a Buddhist thought in a conceptual framework. It's more of an experiential. So, somebody who's still 18, 19 is far more attracted by the conceptual, So, I think I remember probably in my second or third year of college, I came to Dharamsala and I was backpacking and I ended up sitting in one of these teachings of the Dalai Lama on Nagarjuna, and it completely blew my mind apart that, I couldn't imagine this great, this great tradition had originated here and how, that. And I just felt a great sense of as if I'm missing out on something very big. And I just started making me feel what we are doing in philosophy is totally useless. Even if I'm having classes at home, my professor himself, he's a wonderful person, but the exposure to this tradition didn't exist. And I clearly remember coming to this village, backpacking in that trip, the year of the Kargil. When was that? 98, 99? 99. 99 June.
Yeah.
Came here backpacking from Dharamsala after teaching. I didn't know anybody. I stayed a night here in this monastery and then went ahead to Mandi and all. Cutting to film club, some social things in college. I started this group, Friends of Tibet. I started doing screenings using the film of Kundun and talking about Tibet issue. And then I met Sethu Das, this Tibet supporter, was a journalist in the Economic Times. And I don't know how I met him. Oh, I met him because I used to use Wayside Inn because I used to go to Max Miller. Opposite that was Wayside Inn. And I was quite pally with the old uncle and all. So when I started this Tibet thing on my own in 98, 99, I used to put this simple one-page black and white poster, Friends of Tibet, contact this number, my email, and so I used to use that as a sort of. So Sethu contacted me through that, and then through Sethu I met Tenzin Sundu, And then 99 we did our first event at NCPA, this exhibition of two photographers, Diane Barker and this Swiss photographer, Jacqueline something, both on Tibet. That was 99, November, December, NCPA, one of the galleries. And there this girl came, Reshma Piramal, to attend, and long story short, we created this thing and we said, let's do this Festival of Tibet. And 4 months later, we had a big Festival of Tibet, Dalai Lama, there's many, I think that was But there in the Festival of Tibet, Prabodh was also very voluntarily involved, and he curated a seminar on reworking the world with the Brahma Vihars, the four boundless of the Buddha's teaching. Maitri, Karuna, Upeka and Mudita. And Prabodh brought Lokamitra for that. He introduced me, who's started the Trilok Buddha Mahasangh, probably came to India in the 70s as a Buddhist monk, started working with followers of Baba Sahib and then married her. And then Prabodh also brought his friend Ranjit to help in, Ranjit Hoskote, who recommended we should bring Sulak. Sulak had just won the Right Livelihood Award last year or 98 or 99. And Sulak came, Samdong Rinpoche. And then there were these also academic scholar, people like MP Rege, who's this great Sanskrit scholar from Vai. And
in Bombay, all this.
Yeah. So we did the seminar, part of the festival. And Sulak, Samdong and all were the stars. And that's when Sulak I connected with and started reading his books. And he gave me a couple of books. I wrote to him, he sent me more books. And then, in short, he gave me a scholarship to come to Thailand. And I was also attracted to Sulak because of Naropa University and this. So I just finished my bachelor's, and then I said I didn't know what to do for master's or job, nothing. I took a gap year and I went to Thailand. I spent a year and a half there, got tossed around in like 10 different projects, from interfaith music festivals to working with indigenous hill tribes in northern Thailand, to documenting some of the training Sulak's people were doing with the different ethnic groups from Burma, to organizing conferences and workshops on the Vinaya, to working on a project with Chandra Muzaffar, Ashish Nandi on, alternate societies and worldviews of Southeast Asia on peace and justice. So Sulak has that sort of rich gamut of interventions, and so that was a very powerful experience. Came back, year and a half, got a full scholarship on Naropa. By then, through Sulak, I started meeting more Tibetan teachers. Being in Thailand, got exposed to the Theravada tradition and references of India, which I never experienced in India, like the Pali tradition. And so all that was a very rich, exposure. And also understanding realities of our neighbors, which I think in India we don't value. Like sometimes I feel even the so-called intellectual, well-read friends of mine, like what happened in Cambodia or Pol Pot or Laos, and understanding their resilience I think there's a lot to learn. Just because they are a small country doesn't mean they are, sometimes even and also, other big thing for me being in Thailand was the top two universities in Bangkok, Chulalongkorn and Thammasat. Youth in the universities, more alternate, were reading Vinoba Bhave, Gandhi, Tagore, Krishnamurti in Thai language. And I felt that all my friends, growing up in Bombay, even we were reading only European thinker. So that really made me reflect a lot on roots, references, Anyway, I'm just sort of jumping in. Came back, and then by then I was studying with Tibetan teachers, Buddhist, informally, and my teachers did this, do this divination, prediction, and then I had to go to the US, I had a visa, I had my ticket, full scholarship in Naropa. They'd never given before, and I later, in fact, the lady whose award I rejected, she later came to Deer Park as a student. I was the only person to reject that award. Anyway, long story short, I decided to stay in India because of the Mo. And 2002 moved to Delhi to do a master's in filmmaking, purely to be near my teachers. I didn't care about the degree. By then, because of Sulak and all this, I was quite exposed to a lot of the alternate. In fact, 2001 or something, I went with Sulak for the opening of Bij Vidyapeeth. And that's when I met Fukuoka and Muhammad Idris and So, and that's where I met Manish's sister, Shilpa. And then 2002, 2003, she started walkouts. And 2004, I had already walked out of my mainstream degree from Jamia. I walked out. I did 2 years and I left 3 months before because I said, I can't agree with attendance and this institutionalized oppressive control. And you want us to be socially engaged filmmakers and. But between 2002 and 2004, when I was back in Delhi, I was doing trainings for Sulak's organization and Oxfam. They had a project running for nearly 6 years inside Myanmar during when the junta had a real tight control. Grassroots leadership training for people from Burma from different ethnic groups. Because Burma had over 52 ethnic groups. Many of them are infighting. But Sulak and some of his team members were more influenced by Gandhian and Swaraj thought that junta's there, but there's no MNCs. Burma's not opened up. So let's use that block of the junta to create more self-reliant models within Burmese communities. Because once Burma opens, they knew that it will be taken over. And I think Thailand had experienced another form of colonization because Thais interestingly have pride that they were never colonized. But their biggest colonization, like Sulak says, was opening the doors to America to use base to bomb all the neighbors. So that is a very powerful experience because the focus was on self-reliant governance, alternate education, traditional livelihood models creating. And I did a lot of trainings for these groups in mother tongue education, energy issues, so like barefoot college, organic agriculture, civil society movements, so working with Jagori, Ashish Nandi, they would come to India and naturally they would be taken off from a sort of out of Burma, in a different pretense, tourism-based Burma, Thailand, then come to India. 6 weeks in India, I would travel with 35 of them. From the moment they land at the airport till they go off, it entirely my responsibility, logistics, designing schedule, interactions, everything. So it was a big experience for a 22-year-old. I was alone. So I just had 1 or 2 young people to help me on logistics. So I did like 4 or 5 of those journeys. So that was very powerful, going to Ladakh and, staying in villages and, whether it's Helena Hodge, Sundarlal Bahuguna. I mean, we did a lot, exposing them to mainstream development, the problems and the resilience. So like even including, we did workshops with Theatre of the Oppressed, Augusto Boal's methodology, So we did a lot of that with these Burmese groups. Then Jamia, and I walked out, and 2004, by then I already connected with Dzongsa Khyentse and he Dalit Ambedkarite thing was with Lokamitra. So that was a big coming in contact with them. 2000 was the first time I met him. And then after that we've become, we did a lot of work together, including taking the Dalai Lama there to Nagpur and, and many other things I've done for the Ambedkarite, that interventions. But naturally there the complexity or the challenge is very clear. That we know that Buddhism, physical Buddhism has been out of India since 12th century AD. So there is what access we have for Buddhism, it's very clear you need the Buddha, the Dharma and the Sangha. And the Sangha or the ordained Sangha and the lay Sangha have to study the Dharma to be upholders. And Dharma is the canonical tradition, the Pali canon, the Sanskrit canon. So all of that has been out of India. We don't have it. It doesn't exist in Indian languages. So there is no parampara of that study, practice. So I think it's only after the Tibetans came to India, there has been some contact, but Tibetan Buddhism also is so complex that it's very difficult for people to kind of navigate. Also language, and whatever little references we have of Buddhism or Buddha, it has a lot more, it looks very far away from Tibetan Buddhism. Tibetan Buddhism, doesn't look very simple, austere, so complicated. All these deities and, So, Buddha and Marx, jumping to Buddha and Marx, I think, I wouldn't say I've been sort of influenced directly by Marxism, my encounter of Marxism is more through Buddhism, especially notions of equality, and also looking at Buddha's life and Buddha's response to the caste system. So that gave me a lot of sort of perspective to look at the Dalit issue, the Ambedkarite issue, the injustice, the collective karma, and also looking at the Tibetan issue, their own suffering, such a large group of people suffering and how they relate with it. And I think equality, social justice, and also I think for me the other thing which I feel as a sort of relationship between Buddhism and Marxism is I think looking at capital, looking at the environment. So somewhere fundamentally I feel I wish if Marx had encountered Buddhism, Marxism would have been far more evolved to a larger universal context. I mean, naturally I think Buddhism at one level is very personal, because we have to work with all our own individual, I won't use the word karma, but all our habitual patterns, our ignorance, so what is your situation, what is mine, cannot be the same, at that personal level. But yes, there is a shared karma. So we all are sharing a karma or a reality, let's not even use the word karma, of climate change and environmental degradation, which we all are experiencing at different degrees. Some communities are already suffering, in horrible ways. Like we talk about air, clean air, right? So, I mean, that level, yes, we have to sort of look at the collective, but also it can't be completely black and white. It can't be like uniform. I think, and also when we say like, I don't know, I mean, like when we look at people's journey, like my teacher often says that, I think he says that, how does he put it? This quote, I'm trying to remember. But he says that intellectually, I'm giving a sort of brief of it. He says intellectually, it's completely possible to save the planet. But emotionally and habitually, it's impossible. Because I'm saying if we talk about America cutting down their emissions, fundamentally we're talking about habits. And that is tough, na? Changing habits. I mean, it needs a lot of effort, and it's not easy, habits of lifestyle, and so I'm saying I can see my own habit of how I like my tea and how I like my toast. I'm saying habits can be as small as that. Anything which binds us, and then we become like sort of stuck to that, na? Like, so it's tough. I mean, from a Buddhist point of view, we know that working with habits, however small, insignificant they may be, can take time. But again, that doesn't mean that but I'm only saying that from a Buddhist point of view, at some level, you feel more pessimistic and depressed. I think for my work is create more skillful bridges. And again, it's not just Tibetan tradition, Thais, Zen. So a lot of our friends from other Buddhist groups have been doing a lot of work with groups in Nagpur, Pune. Last 5-6 years, some friends from the Zen tradition, they come and do every year workshops there. This year, when very prominent Theravada Western monk, Bhikkhu Bodhi, he went and did some workshops in Nagpur. So, things are happening for sure.